going to now get us officially started here. I did want to welcome each of you to today's virtual forum. Clean Slate starts here. So we are here today to explore the impact of clean slate laws. Specifically, we're going to be talking about legislation that is designed to allow for the automatic sealing of certain criminal records. And we'll be talking specifically about the impact of these laws on the systems and the people who make it all happen. So these laws, these clean slate laws, represent a major shift in how criminal justice, records management, technology all come together and where they all intersect at this point of records management and digital technology transformation. And, to comply with clean slate laws, there is transformation required. And that's transformation across processes, across teams, technology, and then also the way that resources are allocated. It's going to be requires a shift in that resource allocation. So our goal for today is to unpack what all of this means in practice, the challenges, the opportunities that come with clean slate laws, and the lessons that are going to be shared today by two leaders from Fairfax County, Virginia. So I am now going to, I'm going to bring our panelists on screen here so you all can see them. They'll come off mute, I think, as well. All right. Good morning, Chris and Rex.
Good morning.
Morning, Laura.
Good morning. All right, so I guess I'll say something about myself very briefly. So I'm Laura Starr. I'm a consultant within the Intelligent Information Management practice at Quality Associates Incorporated, or QAI. One of QAI's specializations is records modernization to support compliance with new clean slate record sealing laws. And in that process, I've just had the great privilege of collaborating with both Chris and Rex on their clean slate efforts in Fairfax County, Virginia. And so I was just so thrilled when they both agreed to be a part of this virtual forum today. And gentlemen, I'm just excited to continue to learn from you each today and hear what you have to share with the folks that are here with us. And because both are very humble civil servants, they actually asked me to read their bios that I think were written by their teams rather than them having to do with that themselves. So I'm just going to read two little blurbs here. So first up is Chris Falcon. Chris has been the clerk of the court for the Fairfax Circuit Court since 2024. Chris is a first-generation college graduate and attorney dedicated to modernizing court services and improving community access to justice. A lifelong Fairfax County resident, Chris brings over a decade of experience in law, government, and leadership, having previously served at the Arlington Circuit Court Clerk's Office and on numerous local boards and councils.
Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome, Chris. And now, Major Rex Pagerie, a 27-year veteran of the Fairfax County Police Department. Rex currently serves as Commander of Logistics and Judicial Services in the Resource Management Bureau. He has led units in operations, logistics, and investigations, including District Command and Technology Program Administration. Rex, good to see you as well.
Thank you.
And Chris and Rex, thank you again for joining this conversation. I know everyone is really looking forward to it. Before we get into that conversation, and actually a little bit of introductory content too, we would like to just understand a bit more about you all that are attending here today. We found the best way to do that in this forum is through polling. So you'll see a poll question pop up here for you. And we're just interested to see what you're hoping to learn from today's session. So we have some options here for you, practical steps, some case studies or ideas on how other agencies like Fairfax County are approaching implementation, technology requirements and modernization strategies for those systems. We have a specific one here that some folks might be really interested in, how to estimate the volumes of records you have that fall under this Clean Slate legislation. And then we have another option here for folks that might really want to know how what funding opportunities there are and how to make a strong case for budget to support compliance. So we are getting a few responses here. I can see those live. Looks like right now most folks are interested in how agencies like Fairfax County are approaching implementation. So you are definitely in the right place, since that's what Rex and Chris will be highlighting and talking about in the conversation today. So thank you all for your responses there. So just a little bit of scene setting here for the conversation today. So clean slate laws are spreading across the United States, from Virginia to California and many states in between. These laws certainly are transforming the lives of citizens. There's no doubt about that. But what we're going to be focusing on today is how clean slate laws are transforming the strategic and the day-to-day operations of a variety of local organizations. Circuit courts, law enforcement, county governments, and even private companies are impacted by these changes in the law. And so the laws present unique challenges and opportunities depending on your role and your organization. I just wanted to do a really quick high-level review of the new clean slate sealing laws in Virginia. Now, I know not all of you are based in Virginia, but we did want to just set the scene here for what Chris and Rex will be talking about. In Virginia, these clean slate sealing laws are going into effect this coming July. That was actually pushed back from an original July 2025 date, which I think the team here is going to be talking a little bit about. And just at a high level, an overview here, and I'm sure, the majority, if not all of you know this already, but that sealing is about making criminal records non-public. Sealing does not erase those records or evidence. That's expungement, which is also another component of the clean slate legislation, a different statute than the one that is referenced here. So you will be hearing us talk about sealing and expungement of records and evidence. These new laws apply to arrests, charges, convictions, traffic infractions, and marijuana offenses. Again, this is all specific to the Virginia law. And these eligible criminal records, they will remain accessible for certain legal and regulatory purposes, like I think, for example, like federal investigations. They would still remain visible and accessible for those reasons, but within the state of Virginia, they would not be discoverable. So these new laws do apply to offenses that have been committed since January 1st, 1986, so 1986 onward. And again, I think our team here will be talking a bit more about what that really means and the impact of that. As mentioned, there are many impacts of these laws that Chris and Rex will be sharing with us today. We just listed a few here just again to set the scene as we think about this and listen to what they have to share with us. Certainly impacts to technology systems, including updates to existing systems and new purchases. It's also very important to think about where all of these records are today, what format they are in. I know many of the records that are eligible under this law are in analog form, so paper, microfilm, audiovisual, and you can't unlock that information while it's in that analog form when you're talking about automation at scale, right? So that does require digitization, planning, and implementation. Also, an impact is on workflows and forms to enable all of this and for the share of information between internal teams, systems, and with other partnerships that we'll be talking about. There is a lot of awareness and training involved, both for internal staff as well as citizen awareness campaigns. And I know we'll be talking more about that in a bit. And then finally, another impact is, and I think of this one as a really positive impact, is that it requires development of deeper partnerships across and among local government departments. So like we're seeing here today, just with Chris and Rex both being a part of this, representing two different groups within the Fairfax County organization. but then also between municipalities, local government, and states. So we'll be talking about that too, right? Like the partnerships with state of Virginia agencies. And then there's also partnerships required within the private sector, both in terms of how this record information is being shared for background investigation companies, for example, and then also just going out into the private sector for additional resources to implement projects. So that's what we're seeing at a high level as the impacts. And again, the intention today is to bring that all to life through what Rex and Chris will be discussing. One other slide here, we do have some resources we wanted to share with you all. These are the first two that you see here are specific to Virginia agencies, but we do think they'll be helpful to everyone, no matter what state you're a part of. The first one provides a brochure about the new sealing laws in Virginia, so it kind of goes into more depth on that overview I provided. And then the second resource is from the Virginia State Crime Commission. The VA State Crime Commission has published a number of brochures and presentations. And I think these are really interesting because they're specific to agencies, different agencies in Virginia. So you can find resources from the Department of Motor Vehicles, the Supreme Court of Virginia, and also state police to see what their planning and implementation strategies for complying with the new laws looks like. And then there is also a link to QAI's resource page that has information on Clean Slate initiatives per state. So you can find more resources there depending on what state you're representing. So you can either scan those QR codes and it'll take you to the sites, or we also have the links to those sites in our chat. And we have one other audience polling question here, just as we get ready to transition into our discussion with Chris and Rex. So you'll see that poll pop up. And the question is, again, this is just kind of to take the temperature of you all here today. How prepared do you feel your agency is to comply with new clean slate laws? So we have the options of we're just really learning, we're just kind of dipping our toe into this. We've started planning already. It's a work in progress, so some steps have been taken, or we are ready. I'm really curious to see if we get any we are readies. So far, we don't. Right now, it looks like we've got, we're just learning, and it's a work in progress, and some planning as well. So that's great. Again, definitely in the right place, and I think what Rex and Chris are going to be sharing with you all today will help you along your journey, no matter where you are. So now we are going to go into what we've called our fireside chat portion of our session today. Again, this is intended to be a free-flowing conversation. So what I'm going to do is actually turn off our PowerPoint here so that we can just focus on the conversation. And what I just have a kind of a high-level question to get us going here. And I think Chris, you're actually going to kick us off. Just talking about kind of how this all started for you. And then we'll also get Rex's position and perspective kind of bouncing off each other. So Chris, hello.
How you doing,
Time for me
Laura?
to be quiet.
Good morning. Thank
Good
you for
morning.
organizing the forum. So how did it all get started? Well, let me set the stage. So we have to go back to 2021 when this legislation was initially enacted. And this is our Virginia criminal sealing legislation. It dates back to bills in the House of Delegates from Delegate Charneil Herring and from the state Senate from Senator Scott Servo. So we in the clerks of courts have been following this for years now. So once that General Assembly session concluded, we knew that a criminal sealing bill was coming down that was going to be effective in a couple of years. Why is that relevant? So we find out this law has changed, and reporters and the news agencies started reporting out there's going to be criminal sealing that allows for sealing of misdemeanor non-convictions and also some convictions. The public heard about this and started asking the courts about it almost immediately. I remember, because I was a deputy clerk at the Arlington Circuit Court at the time, we start getting citizens coming in saying, thank goodness we can finally do something about this shoplifting charge from 20 years ago that has been on my record. So we've been working and dealing with this for many years now. But as I mentioned, people wanted to start moving forward with the criminal ceiling back in 2021. We explained to them that it had a delayed effective date until 2025, which has now been pushed to 2026. The classic example, and I had numerous people who I met over the years that this applied to, are someone that may have had a, like I mentioned, a shoplifting charge, 18 years old, uh, took a couple of things, and those things added up to over $200, which at the time was the threshold for grand larceny in Virginia. And so now they ended up with a misdemeanor shoplifting conviction on their record. Over the years in Virginia, the rule has always been charges and convictions stay on your record forever. That has been the rule that we have functioned with. And we had a tool which was expungement, which allowed people to petition to remove non-convictions from their record. So they could petition to remove a charge that ended in a finding of not guilty. The prosecutors didn't move forward with it, a nolle pros, or it was a dismissal. But it didn't allow anything to happen in those cases where someone ended up with a shoplifting conviction on their record. So I would meet people over the years who were like, I have this thing that happened when I was 18 years old, and you mean to tell me that the law doesn't allow me to do something about this shoplifting conviction from 20, 25 years ago? And the answer was unfortunately not. Right. So I was glad to see this legislation come through. I think it addressed certain things with people who were being able to move on and get employment, get jobs, get credit, and these charges would pop up on their record. But those were the folks that we were meeting with. And I was glad when that legislation passed. It's now been pushed to July of next year when it will become effective. But it has changed fundamental. It is a game changer on the way our courts function and on the processes and things we had to change. And I'll go into those, but I don't want to go too long and allow Rex to chime in on this.
Yeah, 100% game changer for law enforcement as well. Fairfax County is a huge agency, 1,400 officers, 400 square miles we cover, and there's about 2 million people live in the county. And then, of course, you have all the people that come in to commute during the day, so that spikes our population up. And all those people, obviously, some of them are commit crimes and like shoplifting, like you just mentioned. So when I was kind of thrust into this late in the game, I guess you could say. We had a central records director who was retiring. I got transferred here to the logistics division, and he said, "Oh, by the way, before I leave, I want to mention this law change." And that was before they had pushed it to 1986. So I kind of looked at it and I said, well, boy, this is going to be a crossroads here for the way we do business in records management for the police department. And it's really forced the hand of the police department to kind of collaborate with the courts and internally and externally agencies with the county attorney, et cetera. So these are all stakeholders that are key to making this work. And I can try to tell you my journey through this, and then I guess you can probably say some of it's the same for you in the courts, probably a little more detailed than us. But like I said, it was a crossroads, and this was an opportunity. We did an assessment of what we had. So we had files. We had microfilm files back to the 1940s. And originally, I thought we had to go that far back. And some of these files, the way we used to redact them was actually take a piece of black tape and put it across the film and just run it through the system. So how do we handle that? How do we manage the handwritten reports from 1986, where someone writes in script, someone writes in print, or someone is hieroglyphics because their handwriting's so poor? How do you handle that as far as digitizing that information and modernizing it so it's searchable and we can use artificial intelligence to help us with the redaction? So this is a scalable task rather than doing it manually like the old days. So my expungement section only has a handful of people to manage these things. And before this, we were just getting the court orders and they would handle the court orders. But to give perspective to the listeners or to the viewers here, when we get an expungement from one person, it could be one case, like a shoplifting case, or like we got one last week where the person had 60 charges that they wanted to be expunged. And that was actually a result of one of the clinics that like the courts put on and private industries put on. So that comes in. It's not just an easy task for the expungement specialist to handle. It touches everything, right down to the officer's handwritten notes, in-car video, body cam footage, any repository we have, our report management system, our RMS. We have external programs like Pagerie and Axon that manages a lot of that stuff. Investigative files, anything that handles or touches that case has to be redacted. So if you have one individual with 60 charges, that's a lot of work for one individual. And it's certainly not scalable when this wave of automatic expungements is going to come forward. We had to do workforce planning. I recognize that right off the bat. So I got started on it right away. And that brings in the funding aspect of this. How are we going to pay for this? Not only the staffing to hire full-time employees, the benefits and the workspace, the computer that goes with it and all that stuff. But also, how are we going to fund the monumental task of digitizing this information and modernizing it so it's searchable and we can introduce automation into the process? That's the only way we can do it. So we looked at it. We started getting quotes from vendors and on the digitation of the files. In order to do that, we were looking at price tags anywhere between $500,000 to $1 million. Some of them were over that. So, we're fortunate in Fairfax County. You and I, we're a pretty wealthy county, but there are smaller agencies in Virginia and across the country. They just don't have a budget like that. We were fortunate that we could tap into some seized assets to help pay for this and cover the cost on this. But it's a daunting task. So we inventoried our files. We got a starting point. I looked at it as a project management format. And I looked at it as an opportunity to completely restructure our infrastructure or change our infrastructure for our systems and how we handle data management. So you mentioned stakeholders and partners. That's key to moving forward. We really had to bring everybody together, our finance division, our archive section in the county. How are we going to handle the Virginia Library of Retention, those cases? How are we going to eliminate those from our mix? We looked at bringing IT into it. They're key. They're a key partner in this whole process. Our county IT bureau and our internal IT bureau have really been the guiding light, getting us forward and dealing with the vendors. And of course, then there's the legal aspects. Security. How are we going to handle this with utmost security of the files? Protecting people's privacies, and then of course vetting the vendors that we're looking at to give us solutions to this problem, or I shouldn't call it a problem, to this advancement. So county attorney was involved in this. We did a lot of NDA work, a lot of vetting, and then brings us to the point where now we're ready to kind of move forward. We got the staffing that we need coming on board. We have a plan in place. Like I said, we look at it as a project management format. And we're doing the milestones along the way. So I have a Gantt chart on my board in my office where I look at, okay, where are we? Where's the milestone we need to reach this week or this month? And of course, in government work, everybody can probably agree there's hiccups along the way. Our procurement section may be behind this week or this month, and we have to get a new quote. There's a lot of hurdles to jump over, but that's kind of the broad view of how I'm approaching this and to get us across the finish line and be in compliance with the law.
Yeah, ours was very, very similar to Rex's experience. So I'm glad you mentioned that the original form of the bill, Rex, did not have a go forward date. So we were going to have to go back to the beginning of time, essentially. And that was something that allowed us the opportunity to talk with the legislators and let them know logistically that was going to take decades to do, right? So we needed a go forward start date, and the updated version of the bill came along with 1986, which is much more doable, nearly 40 years, 4 decades of files. So I'm going to get to that. But my story is I'm elected November 2023, the clerk of the circuit court in Virginia. For those of you that are not in Virginia, is an elected position. I'm elected to an 8-year term. It's the longest term of all the elected offices. I always like to get that little plug in there in Virginia. And one of the things I encounter when I take office is that we are working with some stakeholders, some partners to abide and make our systems ready for this huge law change that's coming. And as I mentioned earlier, I called it a game changer. It is. It requires fundamental changes to our case management system. In Fairfax County, we're the only circuit court that does not utilize the state Supreme Court case management system for our files. We have our own system, our own vendor. So thankfully, in January, we start having discussions with the other key stakeholders, which are the Virginia Supreme Court, the Virginia State Police, Fairfax County's IT office, and we start these meetings, which had started before I took office because my predecessor very intelligently had started these conversations. So I'm handed something where I don't have to start from scratch. These talks had already started, and the decision was made. We will stay on our own case management system, but now we have to adapt it so that we can comply with this law change that's coming at that point. We thought coming July 2025. So very grateful to have had those conversations, willing partners that are working with us. The Supreme Court has had IT development personnel working with us every step of the way so that we are ready come July 1st next year to be able to do automatic sealing at the time a case concludes. So I'm grateful for that. But also the state police has been jumping on these calls and working with us. We can't seal anything at the circuit court unless we know what cases qualify. So we need the state police to be part of this information interchange. So those were very important. But as Rex mentioned too, there's a huge fiscal impact to this. We are a large office. We have a 180 person staff at the Fairfax Circuit Court, but every single one of them are very busy every single day doing all the other things that happen behind the scenes to keep our justice system working at the circuit court. So to lay this responsibility on top of our existing staff was a non-starter for me. So again, it was important that our association of clerks, the Virginia Circuit Court Clerks Association, worked with our state delegation to let them know we need staff, because we are not going to be able to make this thing happen unless we have additional resources. So grateful to our delegation and to the state government for granting us an extra position in last year's budget. We were able to receive 2 positions from Fairfax County for this work. But again, it's going to be a massive undertaking, but it's going to be able to happen because there have been people that take their job very seriously who have been working in the background to make this thing happen.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things that we did touch on was the partnerships and looking at resources. In the beginning of this webinar, we put a bunch of resources up, and that's very helpful. So I also tapped into like the IACP. There's a forum on there. You can actually ask questions through other law enforcement agencies through their website portal. And Major City Chiefs has a similar format where you can actually email out to other agencies that are going through the same thing. So they give you feedback. Because when this started, I kind of went into it kind of blindly, like, oh, where do I start? Where's the starting point? But once you develop a path and you kind of have a plan in place, I think it makes it much easier. But you have to have partners. You can't do it alone. So partners with the courts. And I'll give you an example, like with these clinics coming through, we talked about this once before, Chris. It's just a mass amount of expungements that come through, especially now as the public gets educated and we do, social awareness through social media, public awareness campaigns, and more and more clinics come up. We just see this mass influx of expungement cases and sealing of records cases coming through. So our staff goes through those, and I don't know if there's a training issue on our side or both sides, but we are collaborating together to kind of iron out those bugs. So,
it's both sides.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was because you and I were able to talk. Now we know. And so folks may not be aware, but the courts, other nonprofits and groups have been putting on these things called expungement clinics for the last couple of years. So before I came back to home to Fairfax County and I was working as a deputy clerk in Arlington County, we put on expungement clinics. So on a Saturday, people could come in and get assistance from attorneys and court personnel to fill out forms to petition to remove non-convictions. So charges that ended in a dismissal, no pros, and not guilty. But one of the issues that had occurred at the recent one that we ran in Fairfax is that some of the paperwork was not fully completed. So Rex and I were able to talk, again, coming back to partnerships, about what we need to do differently when we run the next one next spring. So that just really is one of my practice tips for those watching. Form those partnerships early in the process. Get talking with your police department, your sheriff's office, your Commonwealth's attorney's office, your Supreme Court, your vendors. I know we're going to get into that, but vendor relationships are important. We have a century of paper files in Fairfax County. So this was not going to be able to be accomplished. And I know that's a nice segue, probably where we're going next, Laura. But if we don't start digitizing those files, we will be working to seal paper files to eternity, right? But the expungement clinics are a great thing. But again, if you have something that's not going well, then you can talk to the partners that are all part of the life cycle of these cases to address that and do better in the future. And that was something I also was able to do in Arlington County when I was working there, was develop a partnership with the police, Commonwealth Attorney's Office, the Sheriff's Office on different types of things. And that can happen from just sending an email saying, hey, these red flag laws are coming into effect July 2020. Can we sit down and talk about how we're going to be implementing these? And at least in my career, by coming forward and reaching out and introducing yourself and making an ask, I have had good success with that. So I recommend to those of you, if you haven't formed those relationships with the law enforcement community in your jurisdiction, do that today. That pays dividends when I'm able to go here in our courthouse and know that those partners know that I will always come forward with them if there's going to be some change coming down the pike, so that we're all starting from the same place.
But Chris, I'll throw this out there, kind of switch gears a little bit. So I don't know how you handle it, but our operations are, I mean, you mentioned before, we're busy. We're bringing on new staff. We haven't hired them yet. They're in the background process now. So when they bring on, there's going to be a whole training aspect. And when we have senior employees here that are kind of set in their ways and the way they used to do everything by hand, they would retrieve a case, they would go through the microfilm and it's going to be a whole game changer for how we operate, and it's going to be better. It's just a matter of getting past that learning curve through our training. But that's going to disrupt our operations at some point. So I'm curious, I can tell you how we're kind of looking at as we upgrade and we modernize our files, how we're trying to mitigate the disruptions with our operations. Police department is 24 hours, 7 days a week. Our records section is not, but it's still all operations. It's still part of the mission. So one of the big things we looked at was we're standing up. We invested in a new RMS system, our records management system. Our old legacy system was end of life probably a year ago, and we needed to upgrade. So the timing was perfect for when this came into effect. So we could kill two birds with one stone, I guess is an expression I could use. At that time, we ended up doing our systems parallel, so we could iron out any bugs, identify areas of improvement, and work on the integration aspect with the new RMS system while we ran the old system at the same time. So we ran them parallel to help not disrupt our operations. We also do training for our staff on the changes that are coming forward. But we do those. Our IT section has been fantastic working with us. There's another partnership. So they set up a sandbox environments where we go through okay, this is how we're going to do a redaction. And we learned a lot by our new RMS system. It's completely different than what we're used to. And we learned that it doesn't do what we thought it was going to do. So there's changes that we're working with the vendor to make those changes to make it easier for our staff. But that was all done in a sandbox environment, so we didn't disrupt our operations. There's a lot of things we're doing to make that happen without impacting the officers on the street, the boots on the ground, and then of course our staff in here. So one more thing, I'll just throw this comment out there is if you're going to do maintenance and make changes, you got to pick the off-peak hours. So you look at your analytics. Okay, police work, when is the slowest time to impact records or shut down the RMS system temporarily while we make those changes? Well, for us, let's say, for example, it's 4 a.m. on a Sunday. Well, that's when our IT guys got to do it. That's when they got to go in there because that's the minimal impact it's going to have. And then when our staff comes in at 9 a.m. on Monday morning, everything's ready to go for them. So I don't know how you handled that to minimize your disruptions on your staff, but I thought that might be a good topic for us to talk about.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's hard, but one of the things I've tried to do in my career is recognize when I'm out of my element, right? And IT is one of those places. So we take very, very good care of our IT folks. They've been involved in this process early on. I think I might have seen a little question come through about how we recognize the cases that are going to be eligible for it. One of the ways is that there's a bulk sealing order that's required when we get a large subset of cases that qualify for this from the Virginia State Police. So the trouble with that is the state police has been used to interchanging information with the Virginia Supreme Court through the state case management system, but we haven't historically done that in our own case management system in Fairfax County. So there's a lot of having to work together to say, well, here are the data elements that we're going to send you. And then our side is like, well, we're not ready to take in those data elements because we haven't done that before. We have to involve our developers with our program so that we can do that. But again, that just comes back to the whole, that's something I do not have expertise in. I am an attorney by trade. So I assigned a project manager early on in the process. In January, when I came on, a couple of months later, recognizing these are things that are going over Falcon's head, right? So I need to assign a project manager, have them work early on with our IT manager or work with the developers from the Supreme Court and the state police, because we will not be able to apply this law change to our cases in our digital case management system unless we adapt our program to do it. And Laura mentioned analog systems earlier. I mean, we were as analog as it gets, because I'm talking about 100 years of criminal paper files at our warehouse. So we were going to have to physically have staff go up, climb the ladder, retrieve a file, and then, according to the law, then store it in a non-public location and then be able to confirm that that file has been sealed. So there are much more efficient ways of doing that. And that's why I was glad we engaged early on into the process of digitizing our files. So we're now in that. But along with that comes training all the staff for what's going to be required for this law change. So thankfully, we've had opportunities to get some training from the Supreme Court, from the Virginia Crime Commission. I came back from a conference a couple of weeks back with flyers from the Crime Commission and their excellent webpage, which I know was linked on the chat, about what is going to be eligible for this. One of the things I think is really important that we take in mind is that this is going to apply to misdemeanor non-convictions at case conclusion. One of the areas of confusion for people and for members of the public over the years, and I've worked in courts now for 11 plus years, is that there are people who believe that their cases were sealed at the conclusion of their criminal case, that their non-convictions were already sealed, that they were already expunged, that they didn't need to then do something else to not have that dismissal or no pros or finding of not guilt show up when a background check is done. And then they found out when they applied for a job that shoplifting non-conviction popped up on a record. So I'm very glad this law is going to address those and have them automatically sealed at case conclusion. I do think, and I've told the Crime Commission this, that I think it may result in a decrease in the number of petitions for expungement that get filed. But I think it's a great way that the state is addressing an issue that occurs in criminal justice where someone who has not been found guilty of something still has that charge pop on their record. So I'm really glad that that's going to be addressed with this law change. But I mean, it did require fundamental changes to our case management system, and those are still ongoing. I'm confident we will be ready to go come July 1st of next year, but these were not things that can be fixed overnight. I'm sure people know government changes take a while to be able to be applied.
Chris, there was I'm sorry, Rex, there was a follow-up question here, I think, around sort of the workflow around exchange of information. So the question was, will the Virginia State Police reach out to each court and let them know what cases need to be sealed, or will the Supreme Court reach out to each jurisdiction?
That's a good question, and I'm going to answer it in the classic lawyer. I think you have to reach out to the state police, depending on your jurisdiction. I know how it's working with ours because we're developing a custom way to do this for Fairfax County, since we're the one-off that doesn't have the state Supreme Court case management system. But at least I can answer from my perspective. The state police has been a very good partner in this process, and we're meeting with them, if not monthly, twice a month, to have our development done. So I would come back to the asker of the question and make sure that they've reached out to ask that themselves.
Mhm.
So Rex, I have a question, and this is me obviously not being in the positions that you all are in. So, we've been talking a lot about the interchange or exchange of information between the clerk's office and the Virginia State Police. But are you all, and Chris, this is a question for you too, either one of you, how do your teams interact today across these records that we're talking about in the cases?
So historically, we would get a court order for an expungement or sealing a record. There are some that are like juvenile records and things like that are automated. But that's one of the things we're looking into is like, how can we automate this process? We set up thresholds. For example, a juvenile record after a person is 23 years after their date of birth for certain things, would those be automatically handled through our computer system. So there's a lot of script writing that has to take place, but historically we would get a court order from the courts, and that would trigger our expungement team to go ahead and pull those files and validate everything, work with the courts if there's any questions, or to triage those things, and then of course do the redactions and the expungement process. So that's historically how we've done it. We're definitely going to change the way we do business with this new law implementation.
Yeah, to add on to that, absolutely. So we're all part of this process, this symbiotic relationship. I like to think of it as where petitions for expungement were filed through our court, through the circuit court. We then send them off to the police. Background checks are performed. We receive back confirmation that that the charges are eligible for expungement. Those come back to our file. There are a lot of cases where we have interchanges of information with the police right now, not just on expungements, but also on concealed handgun permit applications, on our emergency substantial risk orders, our red flag law cases. So I'm grateful for the partnership with the Fairfax County Police. They get back the things that we need in a timely manner. But those relationships are key with our local police, with the Virginia State Police. I failed to mention, but early on in my term, in terms of making sure that we were all on the same page, a meeting with our chief judge. The chief judge in a locality is incredibly important to have them on board, have them informed with what's going on. So I met with my chief judge prior to taking office the month before. And this criminal sealing legislation, we knew it was coming. So it was important that our chief be aware that it was going to be a priority for me, and that we were going to make sure that we were talking to all the involved stakeholders. One thing I also failed to mention was we created a program last year called e-case search at the Fairfax Circuit Court. So now there's transparency and public access to criminal case information. Before, if someone wanted to find out information in a pending criminal or civil case, they either had to come physically to the courthouse and sit down and look at a file, or they had to know exactly what they were asking and call the clerk's office and get a clerk to answer those questions for them. But now there's ready 24/7 access to this information. People can look on their phones, on their computers, any time of day or night. So the reason I'm bringing that up is it's even more of a reason for why these changes that are going to affect what's out there about people need to be implemented in an efficient way. So come July 1 or October, actually of 2026, because that's how long we have to make this thing happen, we be able to apply these changes digitally to files, to be able to expunge as many cases as we can, as quickly and as efficiently as possible, and be able to report back to the other stakeholders that we've done the work on our end. But for that to happen, none of that would be possible if we weren't working with the Virginia Supreme Court, who I know is going to be holding training sessions for all the county clerks on this in advance, the state police, and also our chief judges, our local police, and our sheriff's office as well.
So I do see some conversation going on in the chat around the trainings offered by OES and the timelines of those trainings and that type of thing. Is it your understanding that as long, I mean, I don't know if you can answer this, but I'll ask the question. Is it your understanding that as long as progress is being shown, that courts and law enforcement are well on their way to compliance? Like that July 1st date, what does that really mean?
Rex, let me take this one first. I am confident. Having worked now in the circuit court system since 2014, I was a deputy clerk, a civil division supervisor, and I was in-house legal counsel at the Arlington Circuit Court. There has never been a deadline in my experience that the Virginia Supreme Court and the state police and our justice partners have not been ready to go on. And one of the shortest timeframes we had, which I can speak from my experience, is when our red flag laws came in existence in Virginia. When July 1st, 2020 came around, even though we were in the middle of the COVID pandemic, we were ready to go. So I know that sometimes the trainings may be close to that deadline and that makes people a little nervous, but I can only speak from my experience. I know it's coming. And anyone that has concerns or questions, even after the webinar today, feel free to reach out to us. We've been working on this thing for over a year and a half now, so I'm fairly confident we'll be ready to go. It might be a little close up to that deadline, but we'll be good to go.
Yeah, I'll touch base on that a little bit too. I know there was some discussion about state funding for this for agencies. I know I sat in some of our meetings with Board of Supervisors for our public safety meeting, and we discussed how this is going to impact the courts, the sheriff's office, the police department. I think we had representatives from each person there, and we expressed the fiscal impact on this. So there is plans for state funding, but I don't think it's much. So these are factors that people are going to have to consider when they start planning. They should really be already planning for this to be ready for that deadline, because I do think it's going to be a deadline that we have to meet. So if you're behind the curve, there's a lot of work ahead of you.
Rex, I'm really glad you mentioned that, because we had forgotten, or I had forgotten to bring up the Board of Supervisors. I mean, that's just another practice tip that's so important for everyone watching at home. Get to know your county legislators too. That meeting, we had representation. Our chief deputy clerk, Julie Hamilton, was there and drove home that we really needed staffing to make this thing be able to happen. And that it was such a massive change that applied to tens of thousands of files that we were not going to be able to do that without additional resources. So just again, it really drives home the point of forming those relationships, keeping your supervisors or whatever they're called in your jurisdiction in the loop with what's coming is so important.
Yeah, I'll touch base on that as well. I believe I sat next to her when we had this meeting, televised meeting, and the refreshing thing was we had this partnership in advance, and we had some discussions, and we had a common message. So we went to the board with a common message. Hey, this is going to impact us fiscally. Staffing, we need more staffing. We need to find some kind of funding method for this. And of course, we do need time. So I don't know if that had any impact on the legislation as far as giving us more time, but we do need time. But staffing is a huge one. We're not going to be able to bring this across the finish line without the proper staffing. So that common message, that's important to have that partnership in advance while you address the Board of Supervisors, or in your locality, your mayor, or whoever it may be, your town manager.
There's a specific question here around the additional resources for staff. So the question is, how long has the comp board approved the additional employees? I think that's in reference to the 2 additional employees you talked about, Chris. How long they're approved for?
Not to get too into the weeds, but
Yeah.
We had 2 additional positions granted through our locality. One of those positions is compensation board funded. So in Virginia, we have the comp board, which funds positions, at least I can speak from my office, for those of us that are constitutional officers. So I don't have the answer, but I hope it's a permanently funded position, because this work is not going away anytime soon. This is going to be long lasting. It is not like a one-time thing where we do all the work and then we're done and say, thank you very much. That was great. We've sealed everything. It is an ongoing assignment that will be here. So my hope is that is a permanently funded position, because it's certainly needed. I had actually told people before the meeting that Rex is mentioning, I mean, if we don't get one, I know Chris Falcon will do his best and can stay late and do the work to expunge or to seal a file, but we can't force people to stay here after that time when their day runs up. And right now, all the staff are currently assigned to other duties to keep our justice, our criminal justice, and our civil justice system going. Sorry, Rex.
No, I was going to comment on that. So part of at the end of that meeting, our action assignment was to provide a fiscal impact memorandum over to the board, in which we did, and everybody did that. So that brings in the staffing like you discussed. This is not just this is a full career. If we have an employee that comes in, we hire them. We're talking about benefits. We're talking about office space, computer, salary. And we've got 4 employees. We asked for 6, we got 4. But my estimate was about $380,000 a year just to have those employees working for us on this project. So that could go for 25 years if they decide to stay with the county. So they created those positions. The county has funded that for us, for the police department. But that is an impact that's going to be huge for smaller agencies that need the staff. You know, I would imagine some small agencies probably only have 1 or 2 people handling this.
And I think it's important that that often the subject matter experts need to let your delegates, your legislators know that, you know, when they write a law, it's not going to be, you know, waving our hand and sealed, case is done. It is a lot of work on the back end to even seal one single case or expunge one single case because of all the different things that have to be sent out, all of the different systems that one single case touches. So that work will be ongoing. That's why I believe this position needs to be, you know, permanently in the budget. But we'll see. That's hope springs eternal.
So we're running close to our hour mark here. I just was wondering if you all had any sort of last tips for folks, because I see there's a lot about like scalability, right? We know Fairfax obviously is a powerhouse county across the board and very, very large. Do you have any scalability tips for you know, smaller localities, smaller counties for making this happen?
You want to go first, Rex?
Yeah, I would say try to form partnerships with other area agencies, like your partner, your next jurisdiction over. Try to form partnerships, and maybe you can make some kind of task force or something like that to make it an easier on that locality. You know, I can say that as a takeaway, a core lesson in this, it probably doesn't really answer the question, but I'll say that you really need to focus on records management early and often. It's not just a regular, you know, extra task that you have. It's essentially the clean slate infrastructure change is a compliance task. You should treat it that way. This is a compliance task that should be forefront. And I don't know how you scale it in the smaller agencies if you don't have the staffing, but I think you're going to have to reach out and you're going to need to form partnerships to make it happen.
Very quickly, I will just give you our checklist. One of the things we did right away was recognize that we needed to digitize the last 2 decades of files. So right now, our focus is on digitizing all records from 2000 through 2019, which were currently in paper format. So that's our focus right now, getting those records ready so that we can apply this change to a digital file in a much more efficient manner. It's also with clean slate laws, I like to think of it also as spring cleaning. So records management also means record retention. I'm sure you all can tell, but I'm probably an annoying boss because I was formerly a records officer, a FOIA compliance officer. And so I know when I came in, I asked, well, how old are the files that we have here? And I was like, oh boy, all right, sounds like we have a records retention project in the works. And according to Library of Virginia standards, you don't need to retain files after a certain time, and you can destroy them and let the court and the Virginia citizens know through the Library of Virginia that you have kept the final order, but that the record has been no longer retained. So there is multiple things you can do, which is what we're doing. We're having our digitizing effort at the same time that we're having a records retention project, and at the same time that we're training up staff for this work, and at the same time that we're updating our case management system so that we're ready to go. But it's got to be multiple pots on the stove at the same time. So it really is an effort in multitasking, but it can be done. I know that not all localities have the same resources. You may end up being your own project manager, but if you have questions about creating a checklist on what worked for us, I'm happy to make myself available.
Yeah.
Great. And we do have a number of other questions that have come in. What I'll follow up with you all after this, and we can create just a little a bulletin basically to send out to everybody that attended today, because we do have that information, and we'll sync up on that. Okay, just very, very quickly as we get close to our time here. Of course, I do want to thank Chris and Rex, you both for your time. Let me just, are you seeing this PowerPoint now again?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to give a mention, we talked some about digitization here. And as our team has been working on a number of projects related to Clean Slate and digitization, we have been learning a lot about just the process and what it looks like from just that one specific element, right? The one specific element of digitizing these records. And so what we've done in-house is developed production level modules for each of the record types and each of the organizations that are needing to do this. So we have those modules in place. We're happy to share more information with folks about what that looks like, no matter what your volume of records is. QAI, we are here to support you in compliance, no matter where you are on your transformation journey. And that, that's in compliance with Clean Slate laws, but also any Public Records Act laws and FOIA requirements. Because while we do digitization, we do a lot more than that as well. We provide enterprise content management, as well as automated records management, archiving, and digital preservation solutions as well. So if you do, if you would like to chat about compliance, please, I would encourage you not to wait. I think that's been a theme here for sure. And we've been seeing some of this in the chat that, people are possibly feeling a little behind. Please, you can scan this QR code and book time directly on my calendar to chat about this. I can provide perspective from the various projects that we at QAI have been working on related to this. And we just look forward to continuing the conversation. My contact information is here. I saw some requests for contact information from our panelists, and we will we'll follow up with that information as well. One other thing is that we will be reaching out to each of you to confirm your information so you can get a personalized roadmap to compliance poster that we have put together. So that's a little kind of a thank you gift. And we'll be making sure that gets to each of you who attended today as well. So with that, we're right at the top of the hour, and on behalf certainly of Chris and Rex and the entire team at Quality Associates, we thank you for joining us today, and please reach out at any time, and hope everyone has a very happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Good luck,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.